basically in explaining the sources of Turkey's military special role in this country, there are basically very, very crudely, two perspectives. One is historical. The coordinates, the beginning of the republic, well, they occupied a very important place at the heart of the state in the Ottoman Empire. Askeriye discontinued, taken over by the new republic, although the new republic broke its ties with the Ottomans, and the republic was formed by the military. Therefore, military men, they gained hegemony. There was it's a military hegemony in Turkey after the republic. They continued their privileges. This is one way of looking at it. History repeats itself almost. This is too simplistic, if you ask me. Although there is truth value in this, yes, it's different from Austria, it's different from Germany in the sense that military is an extraordinary institution. It's respected because the empire was based on a religious empire based on conquest. The conquest mentality supported by religion, or religious sanctities, and so on and so forth. There is this element of historical importance. Okay, but that in itself is not sufficient to explain the power and the role of the military right now. The military worked for it, if you ask me. So add to the historical position, a proactive military. That is proactive in terms of closing up to the outside world, insulating itself from the outside world, educating the cadets, the officers, with the ideology of Kemalism, sort of drilling into their minds that they are the ones who are going to save the country. They are the ones who are going to protect the country from anti-Kemalist, elements. They are the ones given the task of protecting, defending Turkey's laicism. They are the ones who are a special group. Extraordinary psychology is also injected together with this indoctrination. So they work for it. After, in the 21st century, they started to work with the civil society. They have their own strategy groups. They have their own retired generals heading certain civil societal groups. So you keep saying civil society, but they have their own civil societal groups, for instance. So this is not an army that's just leaning back and enjoying the historical, benefits. They are there, they are working for it, they're working to keep there. They have their own lobbying system for them. But the third and the most important element that explains its power is the civilians themselves, the Turkey's political culture, the political class, in other words. They have always been intimidated by Turkey's military. Military has always been a taboo for them. They have not dared to touch their privileges. No government could ever think of, for instance, the Council of the State, Devlet Denetleme Kurulu, also, scrutinizing, controlling, monitoring the irregularities within the military. No, that's why in the constitution the military left out. So all these exemptions, all these privileges in the constitution, in the parliamentary process, in the bureaucracy, were allowed by the civilians. Why? Well, they did not feel strong enough. Unfortunately, the electoral victories in Turkey didn't mean much. The military still had its power. It was some kind of an, how shall I call, a politically incorrect balance, let's say, or politically unacceptable balance. Nevertheless, a balance. One side heavier than the other, that kept going for years and years until the AKP came to power in 2002. AKP was their nemesis. I mean, this was party in the eyes of the military that was going to Islamicize the country. But guess what? The party did not Islamicize the country. It did not Islamicize the state. It did not Islamicize the society. The society got Islamicized somehow. I would not use the word Islamicized, actually, it's not very wrong. The society became, yes, more conservative and yet more modern. So this was beyond their comprehension, I think. The complexity of the evolution of Turkish society in postmodern and yet religious and conservative way. This was beyond their comprehension. This was the downfall of Turkey's, Kemalist ideology as such, which was based on the belief that as Kemalism rose, as modernism rose, religion would die. It would suffer death as such. It didn't happen. But AKP, of course it does play some part, but AKP is a political party. I underline the word political. So it politicized religion maybe, but it does not Islamicize the country as such. Not the way the military expected to see. It wanted to be part of the EU at the beginning, for instance. It wanted to modernize. It did not touch anything relating to the free market. It did not take up all the bureaucracies and Islamicize it. Although, of course, regarding the women's issues, the picture is different, I must say. Basically, Turkish military looks down on civilian politicians, the political class, regardless of whether they are Islamic. They look down at Mesut Yılmaz, they look down at Süleyman Demirel, they look down at Bülent Ecevit, they look down at all the civilian leaders. There is this, what I call the anti-civilian perspective, which is an anti-political perspective, of course. Anything the civilians do is out of self-interest. They perceive civilians as self-interested creatures who have no notions, who have no commitment to the country, who have no, let's say, collective interest of the nation whatsoever, who have only self-interest in their minds, who are bent on their own self-interest. They are arrogant, the civilians, they are useless, they are wasteful, they are redundant, we could do without them. That's the way they look at it. This has not changed. This is one constant of Turkey's military since the beginning. So it's this anti-political, anti-civilian outlook that makes them perceive not only Turkey but the world, politics, what's happening in Iraq, America, the Western nations, EU, economics, right now, of course, we're in economic, with disdain, with despair, with pessimism. I mean, this is a very pessimistic outlook. Nothing is good. Everything, because the whole world is ruled by, I guess, civilians to some extent. Deep down there is this dislike of civilian world as such, because they're not as altruistic as the military is. So this has been running. This is still continuing. This is still continuing, and this is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Former civilian leaders also, I have this view. I mean, they came up with certain, reactions and protests about the military, trying to tell them that this is not the way you can't meddle in countries' politics. Within the military, I think there are changes. The commanders, the high command, is still more or less keeping the same outlook towards politics, civilians, the world, America, minorities, Greeks, our neighbors. I don't think it's changed much. But From what I know, from what I hear, I come into contact with people from the military who are completely different from the high command. I mean, there's a new generation coming up. They are military men, they are patriots, yes, they love their country, they love the military, but they don't like the way the military is run by those outdated concepts. They want their commanders to be more democratic, more open-minded, more understanding of what's going on in society, in politics, and they more importantly, they want the military to just concentrate on its own business, defense, external defense. It's more than that now. Of course, military is used for international affairs. I mean, for foreign policy purposes as well. But anyway, they are good people. They have just they talk. They've gone there beyond their boxes. They've just unchained themselves to some extent. They know, they have ideas about the world. They are internet addicts. They know what global world is like. They speak languages. They read foreign magazines. They have, international friends. How many of our commanders are really, well, very few have traveled abroad and speak language, but not very many. Yes, very few have traveled abroad, lived abroad, can speak languages. But these guys, these young guys, are brilliant, and they don't want to deal with outdated commanders and so on and so forth. And Ergenekon and Balyos, to some extent, is, I think, their work, in the sense that they leaked out the information. And they did not consider it as betrayal of the military. They want military institution to do and to concentrate on its own business, on its own function. And they think this is patriotic. So things are changing. I think they've already started to change. Very slow, very slow. Unless the education system is also, taken over, unless the civilians start to take an interest in the education system of the military, because it's very closed, then until then, I think change will be very slow. So that's one more agenda which nobody talks about. It's one more maybe item on the agenda nobody talks about as yet. It's too early, I guess, to talk about it. But this needs to be done in the next 10 years.